This Fleet Equipment Unscripted interview is presented by Hendrickson, a leading manufacturer of heavy-duty suspension systems and components to the global commercial transportation industry. Visit hendrickson-intl.com to learn more.
Hi everyone, I'm Jason Morgan, Content Director for Fleet Equipment, and welcome to Fleet Equipment Unscripted. Today we're talking with Patrick Macdonald-King, the CEO of Greenlane. Patrick, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
So Greenlane, putting together a nationwide network of charging for commercial vehicles. You've recently announced the first corridor of 100 chargers with initial locations in Colton, Barstow, and Baker, California. Can you give me a little background on Greenlane and where you're currently at in your development process?
So very excited to announce our first corridor a couple of weeks back. And as you said, it's going to be from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. Approximately, we're opening our first location in the Q4 of this year in Colton. Beyond that, though, Greenlane, a little bit about the company, $675 million joint venture between BlackRock, NextEra, and Daimler trucks. Vision is to roll out a nationwide network of high-speed charging and hydrogen fueling stations for medium and heavy-duty trucks. Combination of locations are going to be greenfield, where we actually build them out like we're doing in Colton, Barstow, and Baker. But we're also going to have locations, we're calling them bolt-ons, where we can actually attach them on the side of an existing facility to sort of modernize that facility, as well as smaller locations that we're actually doing at dealerships, as well as convenience stores.
So when you say bolt-on for current locations, does that mean like current truck stops, that kind of thing? You can kind of buddy up with them and bring infrastructure to those locations?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's an existing travel center or truck stop that actually wants to modernize their facility, and we can sort of tap in there, set up charging infrastructure as well as hydrogen refueling, and tap into their amenities and different services that they actually have already deployed.
Yeah, that's really cool. And, we talk a lot about charging infrastructure. When we do, we talk a lot about the challenges and how complicated it can be, especially for commercial fleets. But I want to talk about some good news here. And I know that you were just at the White House for federal meetings about infrastructure and electric commercial vehicles. What have been some of the big wins so far for Greenlane?
Well, I think, if you look at what the Inflation Reduction Act that actually came out a couple of years ago after the Biden administration, a lot of it was focused on passenger vehicles and light duty. So it was very exciting over the last couple of weeks for them to actually announce all this whole corridor strategy and actually having a real heavy duty and medium duty focus. So when we were there, I was there actually at the White House yesterday. We were actually talking about a roundtable on ZEV infrastructure across the country and certain corridors that they want to light up, as well as some funding that they're actually going to put in to make it happen. So I think it's really important that we actually have a public and private partnership to move this thing forward, just because it's going to take a few years for us to get enough trucks on the road. And in addition to that, you're going to have some deep pockets in order to invest in this today. We talk about the problems with power and utilities and so forth, but it's going to take a couple of years to actually, in some cases, to actually open up facilities. So getting that public infrastructure investment support, I think, is super critical for us to actually move this thing forward in a rapid fashion.
Right. We talk a lot about the private sector of it, with fleets putting in their own infrastructure. Your public view is really interesting. In that regard, too, we talk a lot about grid capacity and do we have grid capacity and can we charge the trucks? What's your view of that from a public and these kind of depot locations, of how much you're anticipating the draw from the grid, and what's your relationship with the utilities to be able to make this a reality?
It's sort of interesting is a lot of folks ask the same questions, and every single site is a bit of a unicorn, right? There's no set recipe. I wish we had the recipe to be able to go and actually put a blueprint together and wash and repeat for every site. It just doesn't exist. So every site's a little bit different, takes a little bit of longer time to actually get a grid from the power. So it's some sites we're going to be doing DG, where we're actually producing some energy on site. Other sites we're going to go directly to the grid. So it's going to be a sort of a combination of, depending on what the requirements on site. Some sites will have battery power. Some sites will have other forms of power generation on site. So it really depends on what the location is. And it is a challenge in the space today. And a lot of it is also utility companies themselves have different problems wherever you are in the country regionally. So California wildfires, they're putting cables underground. Florida, obviously, they have more of a demand during the day. California has excess capacity with solar during the day. Texas, ice storms. So different problems for different areas of the country. So it's utilities have their own challenges and trying to actually support us. In a lot of cases, the challenge is actually getting the interconnect to the grid to get the power to your site.
With all that in mind, all the challenges, and again, I love this kind of public infrastructure view because I know that commercial fleets are dealing with it on their scale, right? From your view, what are some reasons here to be optimistic in terms of EV rollout support and getting this needed infrastructure to get these trucks rolling?
I think the biggest thing is just the support, right? I mean, you can't turn on the 6 o'clock news without sort of hearing news about what's actually happening in the world and our transition to electrification. It's polarizing in some phases too, because you got some positives, you got negatives and so forth. But, I'm a big believer that with government support and sort of getting some of the public funding in place to help companies go and invest and actually make this happen is critical, both on the vehicle side as well as on the infrastructure side. But I'm also a big believer in tipping points. So at a certain point in time, and I think on the passenger vehicles that I've read that in 2027, you're going to see sort of a tipping point where it's going to be more cost effective to produce and create electric vehicles than it is ICE combustion engines. You'll see that same sort of tipping point in the future in the commercial trucking industry as well. We're not there yet, but we're getting there over time.
Well, it sounds like we will have a lot to talk about as this project rolls forward and Greenlane really gets chargers in the ground. Patrick, thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it. I'm sure we'll talk to you again very soon.
Great. Thank you.